On July 19th, 1977, the world teacher, the Christ Maitreya, head of the spiritual hierarchy, emerged from his ancient retreat and is now in the modern world. With his disciples, the masters of the wisdom, he will inaugurate the new age of synthesis and brotherhood.
Good morning and welcome to our World Teacher program on Wellington's Access Radio 106.1 FM, presented by Teresa and David on behalf of Share International New Zealand.
Today our program features extracts from a series of 3 articles by Benjamin Creme on the subject of life after death. These articles were sourced from the October, November and December 1982 issues of Share International magazine. Benjamin Creme begins.
One of the greatest tragedies of our present outlook on existence is our attitude to that recurring event which we call death. We approach it for the most part with fear and loathing, seeking by every means to resist its call, prolonging, often beyond its usefulness, the activity of the physical body as a guarantee of life.
Our dread of death is the dread of the unknown, of complete and utter dissolution, of being no more. Despite the vast amount of evidence gathered over the years by the many spiritualist groups that life of some kind continues after death, despite the intellectual acceptance by many that death is but an awakening into new and freer life, in spite of the growing belief in reincarnation, notwithstanding the testimony of the wisest teachers down the ages, we continue to approach that great transition with fear and trepidation.
What makes this attitude so tragic is that it is so far from the reality, the source of so much unnecessary suffering. Our fear of death is our fear that our identity will be obliterated. It is this which terrifies. If we but realize and experience that identity as an immortal being, which cannot die or be obliterated, our fear of death would vanish.
If further we realize that after so-called death we enter into a new and clearer light, in which the sense of our identity is altogether more vivid, and also that there are yet higher aspects of our being, of which till then we are unaware, which await our recognition, our whole approach to death would change for the better. We would see death and physical plane life as stages in an endless journey to perfection, and death as the door into far less limiting experience on that road. Freed from the confines of the physical world, our consciousness would find great new vistas of meaning and beauty hitherto denied it.
In the time immediately ahead, the masters and their disciples will teach the truth of that experience we call death, and open up for all a great new freedom. We will learn to accept death for what it is, restitution of our vehicles to their source, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, and liberation into a new and meaningful life.
The death of the dense physical body begins when the soul withdraws its energy from its vehicle. This can take place over a longer or shorter period of time. A series of heart attacks or an illness which becomes steadily graver could be the sign that the soul is beginning this process.
As soon as death takes place, the subtle bodies, the astral and the mental bodies within the etheric vehicle, withdraw from the dense physical body. This too can take place quickly or more slowly, but the master's advice that one should wait for 3 days before burial or cremation to ensure that the etheric body has completely withdrawn from its physical counterpart.
The individual consciousness concerned is then left in the etheric body, which in its turn will also be discarded. The particles of substance making up the etheric vehicle will then stream back into the ocean of etheric energy which surrounds us. The speed of that disintegration process depends upon the individual's karma.
When the etheric vehicle has been cast off, the astral sheath gives the person consciousness on the astral plane, where he will remain for a time on one or other of the 7 astral planes, which best corresponds with his astral nature. There he will once again have to deal with the desires carried over from his earthly life, and often remains so enmeshed in these that life on that plane becomes a reality to him. If the consciousness is very much focused on the astral, with very little mental focus, then such a person could remain on the astral plane for a long time, long to our way of thinking, for outside the realm of physical plane there is no such thing as time.
On this astral plane one does what normally one would have been doing in incarnation on the physical plane. And though life on the astral plane is a fact, as it is a fact on the dense physical plane, it is nevertheless only an illusion. All our hopes, fears and aggression, our hatreds, jealousies and vices, form powerful thought forms which must sooner or later be dissolved. Therefore the only hell which exists is that which we have created ourselves on the astral planes.
The hell which we encounter is the hell of our own desires, our atrocities, our own separation and our own grudges and fears which inhabit the astral realm. This is the principle behind the advice that the Masters always give, to learn to control our thoughts and emotional reactions. For that reason it is also important to raise the consciousness as high as possible at the time of death, using the last nerve reflex to drive the consciousness through the astral and the lower mental levels onto higher mental levels as far, as fast and as consciously as possible.
That is why it is so important that there should be some preparation for death, and in the future people will be taught how to die consciously in order to do this. To overcome the fact that some people do not realize that they are dead, there are disciples, initiates, and some of the masters active on the astral plane, protecting people and making them aware of the fact that they have died.
When a person has achieved a certain degree of mental focus, he will not stay on the astral plane for very long, for the astral vehicle would by then be relatively refined and harmonious. It will be able to dissolve more rapidly so that its particles can return to the reservoir of astral matter, or energy, as did the etheric vehicle to the etheric plane.
Incidentally, all these planes, the etheric, the astral and the mental levels, are only sub-levels within the cosmic physical, and are of course really states of consciousness. It may better explain it were I to say that the Masters are conscious on cosmic physical, cosmic etheric, cosmic astral, and the cosmic mental planes.
If a person is sufficiently evolved, sufficiently mentally focused, he will spend some time on the mental level, where the mental body will give him consciousness on that plane, dependent once again on the level to which that person has advanced would be the length of time spent on any of these levels.
For more advanced people, existence on the mental plane would be the last experience before coming into incarnation once again. But it is possible that the mental body in its turn might be dissolved, after which the individual concerned would live in a state of pralaya.
Pralaya is a level of existence of pure bliss, which is neither material, astral, nor mental. Here the soul dwells in its own realm. It is therefore not in a state of unconsciousness, but in a state where the causal body, the body of the soul, is unencumbered by the other vehicles. It is the level between death and incarnation, and an individual in this state feels no impulse to incarnate.
Far from being a traumatic experience, Death for many is gentle and smooth. For most people, the greatest fear of death exists in their expectation of loss of identity and consciousness, of loneliness and cessation of contact with family and friends. Far from experiencing such a loss, the dead man finds that, freed from the limitations of the physical vehicle, his conscious awareness is heightened immeasurably.
He sees both ways, the world of forms which he has just left, and the new world into which he has come, with familiar people around him, ready to welcome him into that more liberated state. At the same time, he can still tune into the feelings and thoughts of those left behind. So, far from being a traumatic experience, death for many is so gentle and smooth that they do not realize that they are dead, and require the help of those whose task it is to acquaint them with this fact.
After the death of the physical body, the individual concerned remains on those astral planes which correspond most closely to the point of development attained by him in physical life. On those subtle levels, our faculties of perception become freed from the process of thinking and reasoning which function through the physical brain. All knowledge and experience can be directly seen, heard, felt and known in their full significance. There is instantaneous perception, knowledge and beauty, and a type of joy and liberation such as we cannot know on the material plane.
On the higher astral levels, this direct experience is of a more ecstatic kind, of a higher, more refined emotional nature, corresponding to the higher astral levels of the heart center. A person who has attained a certain level of development before death experiences an almost constant ecstasy and joy on those levels, a sense of beauty and splendor, which is the reflection on that plane of Buddhi, or love wisdom. Buddhi is actually a state of rapture which can be expected on the physical plane when a higher degree of Buddhic contact is achieved during meditation.
The experience on the mental plane is of an entirely different, more mental kind. Here it is less a matter of rapture than of knowledge or wisdom. Not only the rapture, but the great significance and meaning underlying it can be known on that level. Someone sufficiently evolved, intuitively aware, understands this and the purpose and the will of God.
After experience on the astral and mental levels, these bodies too will be dissolved in due time, and the individual concerned will then live in a state of pralaya. This is a non-mental, non-astral, non-material state of existence, somewhere between life and death. It is a state of being out of incarnation, where the life impulse is in abeyance. It is a state of unending bliss, an experience of perfect peace.
The soul comes into incarnation directed by the Logos, in accordance with group purpose and the plan. It is a great sacrifice for the soul to descend onto the physical plane and take incarnation, which takes place under the self-sacrificing will of the soul. This self-sacrificing power of soul will is a great driving force. In pralaya there is no will to incarnate.
It is possible to remain in pralaya for a few dozen to 1,000 of years, until such time as a group of souls is sent out of pralaya into incarnation, because the time is right and the circumstances suitable. The soul body, or causal body, gains experience in this manner. The causal body receives more soul knowledge, soul consciousness, as its vehicles become more refined.
This refining process of the soul vehicles, the material, the astral and the mental bodies, takes place by means of the so-called permanent atoms. These are atoms of matter, physical, astral and mental, around which the bodies for a new incarnation are formed. The permanent atoms retain the vibratory rate of the individual at the moment of death.
If that person has made great progress, his or her bodies will subsequently be more refined, akin to the vibration of this permanent atom, and, due to the magical working of the soul, will increasingly attract matter of a subatomic nature. In this way, the permanent atoms will spiral up to reach increasingly higher frequencies.
A silver cord connects the soul and its body with the three permanent atoms. Consciousness is continuous in this cord, so that when it is time for the soul to reincarnate once again, particles of matter of like vibration are magically attracted to form around the permanent atoms.
The permanent atoms therefore still vibrate at the same frequency as in the previous life, and are permeated with the consciousness of those levels. The energy vibration is in the particles of matter, which retain consciousness to the point to which they have evolved. The causal body, the receptacle where this consciousness is accumulated and stored, is to be found on the highest of the four mental levels.
At the beginning of subsequent incarnations, when the vehicles are ready, the soul pours its energy from the causal body into its mental, astral and physical sheaths. The accumulated knowledge and experience, gained over a succession of previous lives, pours down from the soul level to the physical brain, which retains as much as it can consciously absorb, use and know.
This knowledge cannot really be tapped until the brain centers have been sufficiently awakened to be used in this way. Where this does occur, we have what we call a genius. In the soul is mirrored the monad or spiritual will, buddhi the spiritual intuition, and manas higher mind. A genius is able to attune him or herself to the soul level and to that of manasic or buddhic consciousness or thinking.
This is the source of that higher knowledge and superior talent held in store from experience in previous lives. A genius is therefore someone who has a close and instantaneous contact with the soul, and can bring the wisdom and knowledge from that level down into the physical brain, because the brain centers, which in most people remain unused, have been opened.
You're listening to the World Teacher Program on Wellington's Access Radio 106.1 FM.
The important factor in relation to the incarnational process is that we incarnate not individually but in groups. While of course individual incarnation does take place, it is only incidental to the greater event of group rebirth. This group rebirth proceeds psychically, according to certain laws governing the manifestation of energies or rays, and connected also with the point in evolution of the groups involved.
The question is often posed about the length of time between incarnations, and a great deal of information has been published on this, much of it erroneous and necessarily speculative. The fact is that there are enormous differences in the length of periods out of the physical manifestation, both of individuals and of groups.
Some souls have an extraordinarily rapid cycle of incarnations and pralayas, while others spend aeons between each incarnational experience. There is no average time, remembering always that we are speaking about physical plane time. Outside the physical brain, time does not exist. However, it is possible to give a generalized picture, which, with many variations, accounts for the incarnational pattern of three main groups within humanity under the impact of three laws.
The masses today are, largely, focused in the emotional astral vehicle. Their consciousness is still mainly that of the Atlantean or fourth root race, whose evolutionary goal was the perfection of the astral body. Many millions now in incarnation were part of the Atlantean race, and still demonstrate powerfully the emotional tendencies of that race.
For them, the less advanced, the period out of incarnation is usually short. Being young as egos, they still have much to learn, and are drawn magnetically into physical plane life by the thought forms which bind them to the earth plane, and by the karmic ebb and flow which has arisen on earth.
They do not have much say in the matter themselves, but under the law of evolution they are cyclically impelled again and again to incarnate, to learn and to experience by trial and error, pain and suffering, to make eventually the free choice, the conscious return out of matter back to spirit and liberation.
Due to the fact that they have not created such strong earthly ties and are more flexible, freer, with more mental focus, those who are somewhat more evolved tend to stay for a longer period out of incarnation. Also, they need more time to absorb and assimilate, because of their richer personality experience, that which can only be taken up and assimilated on the higher planes out of incarnation.
As I've already said previously, more evolved egos spend a greater or lesser period of time in the experience of pralaya, in dissolution, a state of existence between death and rebirth, in which there is no impulse to incarnate again. There, the soul, unimpeded by its vehicles, physical, astral or mental, dwells in a state of unending bliss. Pralaya, or the experience in dissolution, corresponds to the Christian idea of paradise.
There, these souls will wait, sometimes for short periods, sometimes for untold ages, until the need arises for the presence of that particular group on the physical plane. All souls are on one or other of 7 streams of energy, the 7 rays, and as these rays come into manifestation, so too do groups of souls on these rays.
These more advanced egos come in, therefore, not individually, nor swept in blindly under the law of evolution, as are their less advanced brothers, but under group law, for a certain purpose, under the influence of a specific ray energy, and in connection with some aspect of the plan. Each generation brings into incarnation a group equipped with the knowledge and ability to deal more or less with the problems of that period.
There are never more than 4 rays in manifestation at any given time, so that in any period we may look for 4 different ray types in incarnation. For instance, the majority of individuals now in incarnation are 2nd, 3rd, 5th and 6th ray souls. The 6th ray of devotion or abstract idealism is fast moving out of incarnation. It has dominated during the last 2,000 years and began to be withdrawn in 1625, so that 6th ray souls will also gradually pass out of physical plane life and enter pralaya until required again.
An increasing number of 7th ray souls will take rebirth over the next 2,000-year period, because the 7th ray of ceremonial magic, or ritual or organization, will prevail during the coming era. These groups become channels for and exponents of the particular ray energy, and so can work easily in response to its stimulus.
There is another group who come into incarnation very quickly, the most advanced individuals, the disciples and initiates. Neither the law of evolution nor group law governs their return, but another law impels them to rebirth, the law of service.
They choose consciously to incarnate of their own free will. Because they know the plan and wish to serve the plan, they decide, under the assignment of their own personal master or not, how best they can serve. But because they are initiates, the master, who knows the path which will lead them to their goal, watches over them and advises when they should return into certain environments and circumstances.
The initiate will also want to return then to continue where he or she left off, in order to be of further service. They repeatedly and quickly take incarnation to work through the last few steps of the path of initiation. The aim is to work off karma rapidly, and so free and equip themselves for service. The soul impresses its vehicle with this desire during incarnation, and so obviates any desire of the disciple for the bliss of pralaya in devachan.
Another reason for rapid cycles of incarnation may be the necessity of rounding out the disciple's equipment by concentrating one-pointedly for several lives on acquiring some quality otherwise lacking, or to contribute some special quality, perfectly developed in him, to the work of a particular group or nation.
Every soul incarnates and reincarnates under the law of rebirth. Groups of souls come in together in order to work out karma created in the past. Hence, this law provides the opportunity to repay ancient debts, to recognize and work with old friends, to accept ancient responsibilities and obligations, and to bring to the surface for reuse talents and qualities acquired long ago. What beauty and order there is, therefore, in this law which governs our appearance on this plane.
To summarize, we can say that reincarnation depends on the particular destiny of the individual. If he or she is not sufficiently developed, there is no destiny as yet. The individual is simply drawn back into incarnation. When the man has progressed somewhat further, his destiny becomes a group destiny. In the case of a disciple or initiate, however, the cycles of incarnation are governed by his individual destiny and above all by his desire to serve.
And that concludes our programme today. For more information you can call us on 06 36 46 101 or visit share-international.org.
We can highly recommend Share International magazine for the latest news on the emergence of the World Teacher. To inquire about magazine subscriptions, our monthly free of charge newsletter, or books by Benjamin Creme, please phone 04 234 1133, or you can write to PO Box 9576 Wellington.
Thank you for listening to us on Wellington's Access Radio 106.1 FM. And please tune in for our next World Teacher programme, which will be on Saturday the 7th of September at the usual time of 10 a.m.
You can listen again to this podcast and previous ones by visiting our website at share-international-nz.info and click on the radio tab.